In this video, let's try to understand what exactly present inside this UI project and what kind of features of Angular that we are using so that we are establishing a connection from a UI to backend REST services that we have built. For that, so this is the structure of the project that you can see inside your Visual Studio Code IDE. There is a components folder where we have created components for each and every functionality. Like one is for accounts related, balance related, cards, contact, dashboard, header, loans. So all the possible functionalities that we have inside our application, we built components associated to them, and we maintain that modularity inside our project. The beauty of the Angular is maintaining the modularity of your UI application in terms of components. That's where we have created components for each and every functionality. And at the same time, we have model, which is like indicating the data that we are trying to transfer between UI to backend. And we also have services. Services is a layer where we will make an HTTP request to the backend and take the response, which will be passed on to the components from components that will be bind to your HTML pages. So for that, so to understand on a high level what is this application about, I would always recommend you to go to the constant page, app.constants.ts. So if you see here, these are the REST services that we have built on the backend application. So obviously, if you want to understand how this communication is happening, you have to backtrace using these constants. Very first thing that user will try to do inside my application is to log in. So for that, I have to call this slash user, which will perform my authentication and authorization of the user. So I will take this and I will search inside my workspace, and you can see this URL is being called from the login.service.ts. So as I was saying, services are used to make a call to your backend services. Here I'm trying to make a get request, which is environment.root URL is something where our backend application has been hosted. So in this scenario, my backend application is hosted at 8080 port, and post that we are also appending the API path specific to login. So here you can see we are passing the user details that we received from the UI login page, which will have all those email and password. Using this email and password, my backend will validate and will return the response. So as you can see, this is just a invocation to the backend API path. But this function will be called inside from our component. So take this function and search again. We will go to the login component, and you can see here from the service we are calling this function with the model that we have received from the UI, and we are subscribing to that. So as you know, in Angular, we can make our HTTP calls as asynchronous. That's where we have to subscribe to them in order to get execute those services invocation. So once we have the response, we'll take the response and we are saving the user details inside our session storage or local storage, whatever we call. And these user details can be used anywhere inside our application by getting from the session storage. Post that, we are navigating that after successful authentication to the dashboard page. Otherwise, we'll throw an error. So this is how login of the application is working. And you can also ask me like from where this validate user function inside the component is being invoked. You can always search for that function also, and it will take us to the HTML page. So inside this HTML page, you can see on submit of the form, this function will be called along with the form that UI is associated with it. So now we are clear how the login of the application is happening. And once the user is on the dashboard, he can click on various buttons, like one is to get his account details, balance details, loan details, card details, and we also have non-secured paths like contact and notices. So what we can do is we can backtrace these things also. I'm trying to search these, and you can see there is a dashboard service.ts which I have written. Here we have all kind of methods associated that user can be performed apart from the login of the page. So here you can see get account details. We'll pass the user details, and this is a post which is happening to the backend service, and we are saying whenever I'm getting a response, I need the entire response, not only the body or not only the header. I just need the entire response. That's why we are mentioning this observe response. And with credentials true means if the login has already happened, so I'm just saying my Angular application should send that key, OAuth key or JW token key that is returned from my backend, so that my subsequent operations in the application doesn't need the username and password of the logged in user. And we can see get account details will be called from the component of the account dot component dot ts, and here as soon as the user click on the button on the UI, this method will be invoked, and we are passing the already stored user details to this backend API, and the backend API will return all the account details of the user. So this is how all the services will be invoked inside this application. Apart from this, I also want to show you routing of the application, how it happened. So you can see here by default, if no path is given, it will be redirect to login. Like login is associated with this component, contact is with this component. Like that, we have created for each and every path what is the corresponding component, and wherever the paths needs to be secured, we also provided by having a root guard. So root guard in Angular JS will protect those paths based upon a certain condition. You can see users can't access my account because it's a secured path, and if someone tries to access that account without logging in, it will go and check the logic inside this. Here it is trying to search the user details present inside our session storage. That means if the user is not authenticated or try to log in, these user details will never be present in the session storage, and in that case this will be a null value and it will redirect to you to the login page. So that's the purpose of root guards here, and all the secured paths like dashboard, my account, my balance, my loans, my cards, all these are protected using this auth root guards. But whereas roots like login, contact, notices, which are doesn't need any protection, they are free to call these services or pages without logging in. So that's where we have done that routing configuration also. And one last important that I want to show you is the interceptor. So this is the interceptor that I have written. This interceptor will be called for each and every request and response that is going to the backend service. So that request will be intercepted and the logic inside this will be executed. But in the scenario where the user is already logged in and he is trying to perform other operations inside your application, in that scenario, the password will be empty because your backend will clear your password details, and for all the further requests, it will ask you to pass a token. So that's where your this code will not be executed, and your Angular is smart enough to pass those token details every time to your backend with the configurations that we have done inside your all the API invocations. We said here with credentials is equal to true, which means pass all the credentials details that we have received from backend after the successful authentication. This is how our UI project works, and now you also know how the our UI and backend has been integrated using services, components, and once the backend sends the data, all that information will be shown to the user on the HTML pages by using the data binding mechanism in the Angular. So let's try to start our backend server in the next video and try to invoke the APIs involved inside the application and see what is happening. Thank you and see you in the next video. Bye.